Good afternoon. I know we're getting a little late start on this Monday, but that's okay because we have some great film clips to talk about as we continue talking about the progression and the growth of the moving or motion picture. I'm going to probably wear these glasses. It's going to help me out a little bit as we get through this because we got a bunch of clips to show you. When I left you, we of course were talking about D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation. That was from 1915. Right around the same time, a young lady emerged as an actress who, well, she was deemed the first ever America's sweetheart. Okay? And her name was Mary Pickford. And here's a little scene from her movie, The Little Princess. Silent movie, of course. That's her with the hat on. And that's supposedly a friend of hers in the movie. And there she was. That was America's princess. Mary Pickford did a bunch of movies, and then she even ended up marrying one of Hollywood's biggest stars, and that was a guy by the name of Douglas Fairbanks. He was the one who did a lot of swashbuckling stuff. But there's something I do want to show you about this particular clip. That's, of course, the music was added on. But I want you to take a look at this. Oh, hold on. I wanted to show you that. And that, of course, is the beginning of the film. As you can see, it says Mary Pickford in A Little Princess. Now, the reason for that being so important was, you know, at the time that these movies came out, the motion picture, and there were lots of them that were the little short ones, of course, when Griffith came out with Birth of a Nation over 3 hours long, now you started to see pictures or motion pictures get a little bit longer. Most of them really didn't go past a half hour. Some could go for an hour, but they really weren't that long until later on. But what you saw with Mary Pickford is she was the first person to establish something called the star system. Now, what the star system was is that you actually were going to the theater to see that particular actor or actress. See, up until this point, around 1916, 1917, if you were on the marquee of a movie theater, and some of you know what a theater marquee is, we don't see them much anymore because of all the megaplexes. But if, like, you go to Ridgewood or you go to Westwood or, you know, some of those older theaters that are standalones in the middle of, you know, your town, and you see on the marquee, it'll have the name of the movie. And it usually have the star of the movie, too. They used to only have the name of the movie. But then after a while, sorry for the shaking of the camera. But after a while, it ended up being the star would be featured. And again, we do that now. I mean, I'm not going to a movie unless, you know, I want to hear Denzel Washington in The Equalizer or whatever movie that was. I want to see, you know, Denzel Washington or Tom Cruise in or, you know, Halle Berry in. And that, of course, is the star system. And that was established by Mary Pickford. She was the first one to actually have herself marketed, like, this is the actor or actress I'm going to go see. Well, now, as we move on, one of the things that really becomes very popular is comedy. And, well, nobody did that better than this guy right here. Probably one of the most recognized actor or actresses in the history of the movies. And this is one of his most famous scenes. That, of course, is Charlie Chaplin. And this is a movie he did called The Gold Rush. And he took these two dinner rolls and he did a little dance with them. Trying to not get so much shadow in here. A little difficult to do. Of course, I have all the links. So. And that, of course, is Charlie Chaplin. And Chaplin was someone who really recognized the importance of cinema or the motion picture and how it could get people to not only come in but to keep coming in. Is it had to look and be perfect. Well, that didn't sit too well with a lot of people in the movie studios because, quite frankly, even up until today, although it's not used anymore because everything is now pretty much digitized. I mean, not anymore. There are still people who still use celluloid film. The same type of thing that was, you know, William Dixon went up to, Eastman Kodak to go ahead and get developed. Because it's very expensive. And so here's Charlie Chaplin, and like he would shoot one of his great comedy scenes from The Gold Rush or from, many of his other great films. And then he'd want to shoot it again or maybe do something different. And after a while, the studio was like, you know what, you're using up a lot of film. And then, of course, he was a very creative mind when it came to comedy. Comedy is probably one of the most difficult things to do in a movie. To come, you may look at, movies like The Hangover, okay? Not an easy thing to do to come off that funny. It takes some work. And he understood that. And, of course, the studios were saying, nah, you know what? Just shoot it once. It's funny enough. No, it's not funny enough. We have to try other things and look at it after it's filmed to make sure that it's funny enough. Well, studios are giving him a lot of problems. So then Mary Pickford, her husband, Douglas Fairbanks, D.W. Griffith from Birth of a Nation, they all got together and they said, to heck with it. And in 1919, they filmed their own movie studio. And they called it United Artists. Now, United Artists was around for several decades. I mean, it only, I think recently, about 10, 12 years ago, finally went out of business or got bought out because in the movie business, you're only as good as your last bomb. And they had couple of big box office bombs, United Artists, before they finally were taken over. But for several decades, it started off with Chaplin and with Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, D.W. Griffith, a couple of others. And now they had creative control over the type of movies they did and how many times they shot it and how they were putting it together. And it ended up, United Artists was a very, very successful movie studio for most of my life. Again, it was only like within the last 10 or 12 years where it finally just went out of business. So that, of course, the great Charlie Chaplin. Now, besides all these comedies and stuff, there were other movie genres that were introduced to Americans. And I tell you what, oh, look at this. I gotta wait for the... Hold on. I thought I could escape this, but I got an ad I gotta get past. And now I have to find my spot. Here we go. But one particular genre in 1922 really took a turn. It was a German movie that came over to America. And in theaters all across America, people were literally running out of the theaters. They were so scared when they saw this. And this, of course, is the first introduction to America. Where is he? Of the vampire. This, of course, from 1922. I know a lot of you are film buffs. This is Nosferatu. Yeah, people would see this, and in the next couple of seconds here, as this guy goes to his bed and he tries to avoid it, and the door opens up, and here comes Nosferatu, the vampire monster. And when people saw the actor Max Schreck with those teeth and those, his fingernails as long as they were, people got up and were running out of the theater. Because again, this looks so real being on the movie screen. Right here, they saw this and it just scared the living hell out of them. And now, of course, it's scaring me already. The horror genre, what got up and was into full swing. Really popular. Even today, horror movies are just so popular. But there was still something missing. And we all know what that was. Because of the music that was added on to these scenes, because they were silent movies. You couldn't hear what the people were saying. So, of course, in 1927, that all changed. And some of you, I don't know, I don't know what to you guys is an old movie. But an old movie for you guys, The Aviator with Leo DiCaprio. You see a great scene in that film where he, of course, plays the great aviator and movie producer Howard Hughes. He shoots his whole movie and then goes in, sees this film, and reshoots his entire film at a cost of millions of dollars. Why? Because he saw this. Oh. Yeah, see? That's from my cell phone. That's my favorite person, potential spam. All right. Now, of course, it's not that there's a scene in a restaurant. And, of course, it's still mostly a silent film. But in 1927, this actor by the name of Al Jolson, a great stage performer, would star in a movie called The Jazz Singer.
That's what they say.
Oh, my God. People went wild for this. Honestly, I don't even think this is that great a movie. I find The Jazz Singer rather boring.
You ain't heard nothing yet. Wait a minute, I tell you. You ain't heard nothing. You want to hear Toot Toot Tootsie? All right, hold on. So, listen. Play Toot Toot Tootsie. 3 choruses, you understand? And the 3rd chorus, I whistle. Now give it to him hard and heavy. Go right ahead.
But when people went to theaters, and actually what he was saying on the screen was coming out of these speakers, it just drove people. People went crazy.
I'm glad of it. I'd rather please you than anybody I know of. Oh, darling, will you give me something? What? You'll never guess. Shut your eyes, Mama. Shut them for little Jackie. Oh, I'm going to steal something. I'll give it back to you someday, too. You see if I don't. Mama, darling, if I'm a success in this show, well, we're going to move from here. Oh, yes, we're going to move up in the Bronx. A lot of nice green grass up there and a whole lot of people you know. There's the Ginsbergs, the Guttenbergs, and the Goldbergs. Oh, a whole lot of birds. I don't know them all. And I'm going to buy you a black silk dress, Mama.
Let's move up to the Bronx. But, yeah, so when the talking pictures came out, it just changed everything. But unfortunately, what did change was the fact that some actors and actresses, including a Mary Pickford, lost their job. Now, Mary Pickford was America's sweetheart, okay? She's that beautiful, angelic figure in the movies, and everybody loved to go see her, but she had an annoying Brooklyn accent, and she didn't come across very well when it came to voice. So now what you had to do with these new talking pictures is now you had to go find people who could talk, because a lot of the silent film actors really weren't good at talking. Well, starting in 1929, Hollywood found some people who could talk, and probably one of the best ever. This, of course, from 1933, this is one of their most famous films, Duck Soup, and I'm talking about the Marx Brothers.
You expecting somebody?
Yes.
Here, Groucho Marx plays the new head of a country called Fredonia.
We've been expecting you. As chairwoman of the reception committee, I extend the good wishes of every man, woman, and child of Fredonia.
Never mind that stuff. Take a card.
Card? What'll I do with the card?
You can keep it. I've got 51 left. Now, what were you saying?
As chairwoman of the reception committee, I welcome you with open arms.
Is that so? How late do you stay open?
I've sponsored your appointment because I feel you are the most able statesman in all Fredonia.
Well, that covers a lot of ground. Say, you cover a lot of ground yourself. You better beat it. I hear they're going to tear you down and put up an office building where you're standing. You can leave in a taxi. If you can't get a taxi, you can leave in a huff. If that's too soon, you can leave in a minute and a huff. You know, you haven't stopped talking since I came here. You must have been vaccinated with a phonograph needle.
The future of Fredonia rests on you. Promise me you'll follow in the footsteps of my husband.
How do you like that? I haven't been on the job 5 minutes, and already she's making advances to me. Not that I care, but where is your husband?
Why, he's dead.
I'll bet he's just using that as an excuse.
I was with him till the very end.
No wonder he passed away.
I held him in my arms and kissed him.
Oh, I see. Then it was murder. Will you marry me? Did he leave you any money? Answer the second question first.
He left me his entire fortune.
Is that so? Can't you see what I'm trying to tell you? I love you.
Oh, Your Excellency.
You're not so bad yourself.
And, of course, they found a Groucho Marx and, of course, his brothers, the other 3 brothers who were in the movies, and it was just pure gold. And that's what you had to do. You had to go find people who could now talk, and they would become Hollywood's next great actors and actresses who would take over the cinema. But another film genre also was becoming very popular because, of course, starting in 1919 or 1920, America went dry. It was the time of Prohibition. So who, of course, emerges during Prohibition but the gangster? Now, a little tough to do gangster films that were, in silent movies. But once you got the sound, then people like this guy started to step right up.
Did you got a drink in the house?
Well, not before breakfast, dear.
I didn't ask you for any lip. I asked you if you had a drink.
I know, Tom, but... Well, gee, I wish that...
There you go, that wishing stuff again. I wish you wasn't wishing well. Could I could tie a bucket to you and sink you.
Maybe you found someone you like better.
Of course, James Cagney, the famous grapefruit scene from 1931. And of course, James Cagney would be the king of the 1930s gangster films, along with people like Paul Muni and George Raft, and eventually a young guy who comes up in the mid to late 1930s by the name of Humphrey Bogart. And they were all, or of course, Little Caesar with Edward G. Robinson. The gangster movie, when the sound came on, really took off and was a very popular genre. And to give you an idea, as we get into the 1930s, of course, now we're into the Great Depression. After the stock market crash in October of 1929, Americans are looking for escape. Because reality wasn't very cool in this country during the Great Depression. And as we're moving through the 1930s, once you got into that darkened theater, it was like you could lock away all your problems or escape from your problems at least for a few hours. Or, in some case, several hours. And that's exactly what would happen. Is when you went into a theater, you weren't just going in to watch a movie. Like today, we go in for an hour and a half or 2 hours, watch a movie, we leave. Oh, no. When you went to a movie in the 1930s, you got a whole string of entertainment. Because remember, we love to be visually entertained. And I've said that several times, and I'll always say that many times over the course of a semester. Humans love to be visually entertained. And there were all kinds of ways for us to be entertained through different type of, on-screen performances, whether it was movies or serials or cartoons, newsreels. Okay, I'm sure some of you have seen old movies where they show newsreels, because remember, there was no video, news. You could hear news on the radio, but you couldn't see it visually. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to show you this. This is from the 1980s. This is actually something, right before I went into the Marine Corps, I used to love watching this with my grandmother and my dad, because they grew up in the era, prior to, well, my dad grew up just after World War II, because he was born in 1941. But my grandmother used to love this because she would go to the theater. And what you would do is when you went to a theater, especially like on a Saturday or Sunday, you went all day. And here's an idea. PBS had a great series in the 1980s called Matinee at the Bijou. And of course, a lot of theaters were Bijou theaters. And just take a look at the lineup of how many different types of entertainment you got just with one movie ticket for one day.
Today on Matinee at the Bijou, it's the cartoon Boy Meets Dog, an Edgar Kennedy comedy short, Bad Housekeeping, a fast-paced short subject, Snowfalls, Chapter 1 of Winners of the West. Our feature stars James Newell as Renfrew of the Mounties in Yukon Flight. Today on Matinee at the Bijou.
So as you can see, you had a cartoon, you've got a comedy short. Edgar Kennedy, a very funny guy. He actually is featured in the movie Duck Soup with the Marx Brothers, what I showed you before. You have a serial, and then you have the feature. Sometimes you would get a double feature. You would get two full-length movies, and usually they'd be like an hour and a half. So you're going to spend up to 6 hours over the course of that day at the Bijou with all the entertainment that you had. It was something very common, and that's why it was such a big success for PBS in the 80s when they ran Matinee at the Bijou. But as more of the theater during the Depression became an escape, not a lot of people are making a lot of money, and it's the Depression, but at least movie studios were making some money. And they were putting that money into their movies because they knew that people were going to pay, whatever money people would get, they would go ahead and take that money, go to the theater 2, 3, 4 times a week. So they started pumping a little more money in, and by the mid to late 30s, 1930s, you started seeing something common start to arrive. Something that was not very common in the movies, and was not very common in life either, and would actually just mesmerize people. And that, of course, is a color movie.
He'll take you by the scruff of the neck and fling you into the sea.
This, of course, from 1938, The Adventures of Robin Hood. And I want you to notice something here with the costumes. With the exception of some of the soldiers,
Come now, Sir Guy. You'd not kill a man for telling the truth, would you?
look at all the deep colors.
Be thankful that my humor's of a different
Purposely done.
Why, what right do you interfere with the king's justice? I have better right than you have to misuse it, and that goes for your master, Prince John. I'll give him that message. The Baron's meeting in Nottingham tonight. Thank you. He does need a bit of a talking to. Hey, Will? Yes, he has been getting rather out of hand. Fetch him along. Hold there. What's his fault? He's killed a royal deer. You're wrong. I killed that deer. This man's my servant. Oh. I suppose you realize the penalty for killing the king's deer is death, whether for serf or noble. Really? Are there no exceptions?
A lot of very deep color throughout the whole movie. All the scenes in the movie, you see all kinds of very deep colors, and this is still one of the most popular movies ever made, The Adventures of Robin Hood, with Errol Flynn. And that same year, another movie came out where again, it's the deep colors that helped to make this such a great success. And in 1938, we also saw another movie come out called The Wizard of Oz.
You've made rather a bad enemy of the Wicked Witch of the West. The sooner you get out of Oz altogether, the safer you sleep, my dear.
Look at the munchkins and look at the background. Everything, such deep colors. Here, let me forward this just a little bit.
No, that's true. The only person who might know would be the...
Yeah, here you go. You see a great scene. These are some great colors. And this is all purposely done. All purposely done because in 1938, 1939, you don't see colors like this often. You don't have color photos. You don't have a television in the house. And most movies to this point are black and white because it's so cheap. This is not cheap, making a color film in 1938, 1939. Which is probably a reason why almost every color film that was made during the 30s, which weren't many, are still very popular today. And a lot of varied colors. The munchkins, the homes. The red minstrels here, the guards in green and gold. I mean, just some really rich colors. And that was purposely done. And it all tops off in 1939 with the granddaddy of them all. And that, of course, there we go, Gone with the Wind.
My darling, you're such a child. You think that by saying I'm sorry, all the past can be corrected. Here, take my handkerchief. Never at any crisis of your life have
I know what I'm doing wrong. I should have taken my tablet out of the protective cover. That's what's doing this. Thank God I'm giving you the links to all these.
Going to Charleston, back where I belong.
Please take me with you.
No, I'm through with everything here. I want peace. I want to see if somewhere there isn't something left in life of charm and grace. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I only know that I love you.
That's your misfortune.
And here it comes. One of the most popular movies of all time. Colored, so it was very, very popular, very deep colors. And then you hear this for the first time on the screen.
You go. Where shall I go? What shall I do?
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Cursing in film. And of course, the censors let it go. And that, of course, the end of Gone with the Wind. Which is still, adjusted for inflation, the most successful movie in American history. If you adjust for inflation, the number of tickets sold, based on today's prices, I think it would have took like $2.5 billion at the box office, just here in America. And again, very deep colors, very extravagant colors, really grabs the eye. So if you're going to the movies in 1938, 1939, you're seeing some of these great, great films in color. And then, of course, comes the end of 1939, where now, Poland has been invaded by Germany, France, England declare war on Germany. We're now into World War II. So now everything starts to get scaled back until the end of the war. And then at the end of the war, as we know from a previous chapter, what starts to creep up? Yeah, what's that thing called? Television. Well, when I next join you on Thursday, we're going to go ahead and pick up what movies need to do in order to overcome the huge popularity of television, especially because, what was that American phenomenon that was going on? Keeping people home? Well, we got to get them into the theaters now. All right? How about we create something called The Babysitter? Well, we'll see what happens. So I will see you guys on Thursday. Oh, by the way, I think there's a little something that's due to me by Wednesday night. You know what it is. We'll see you then.